Aula de cinema com Coppola, Marvel é fast food e o sonho de Megalopolis.
Olha só que beleza, Francis Ford Coppola, ninguém mais, ninguém menos, esteve aqui no Brasil. Eu e Marcelo Forlani, a gente foi entrevistá-lo lá no O2. Queria aproveitar aqui, já agradecer a galera do O2 Play, que permitiu que a gente tivesse essa grande experiência marcante nas nossas vidas, afinal de contas. Aí a gente chegou lá, o Coppola achou que a gente era irmãos, e desde o começo foi muito legal. Ele veio aqui para promover o Megalopolis.
É que esse post é tenebroso, velho. Puta que pariu. Pelo amor de
Foi uma
Deus.
baita experiência, uma baita entrevista também. A gente vai deixar aqui para você conferir. E o filme é muito massa, hein? Assista o nosso veredito também. First of all, sir, we got to see the movie a few weeks ago, and it's really bold and also very timely. So, first of all, congrats on that.
Thank you.
Aí o Hessel curtiu.
And we have to say that we covered movies that
Leu os comentários dos nerds xingando. Beleza, eu vou ler depois.
like Marvel, DC.
Pô, mentira. Os nerds ficaram... Os nerds pegaram o ar porque eles falaram mal da Marvel. Ou se for isso, pelo amor de Deus, velho. 2024, os caras pegaram com isso.
And we understand why a friend of yours, Martin Scorsese, said
Eles fizeram a
Marvel
pergunta.
is
Velho.
not cinema.
Eles fizeram a
Because
pergunta.
what you've done here, it's art, it's in a different form. How different do you think a movie can be to be considered art today?
Well, this is a tricky
Caralho, o
question.
Hessel pegando viagem. Ele falou a mesma coisa. Ele falou a mesma coisa que ele tinha falado pro Igor 3K. Oh, this is a tricky question.
To be considered art today?
Well, this is a tricky question, of course, because the film companies today, especially with big scale movies where there's hundreds of millions of dollars at risk is an intolerable thought. The people who run those companies have one high priority, and it's their own.
Essa gravata é mais bonita.
They need to earn enough money to make their debt payments.
Tricky
If they
question.
fail to make their debt payments, they're fired. So basically what we have here is a movie that, although it has a similar budget to that type of movie, it's not that type of movie. It's more, you could call it more a personal film or an art film. But an art film at that budget has never existed before. Once it existed similarly, which was in France. You know the great filmmaker Jacques Tati? Mm-hmm. He had made money during his career, and he had one great movie he really wanted to make, and he basically sold everything he had,
Qual é o
borrowed
filme?
all
Tô
the
ligado.
money he had, and he made this film, and it was a flop. And he died penniless.
Brutal.
But that movie was Playtime.
Ah, Playtime. Não sabia que Playtime tinha sido o projeto da vida assim. Foi caro esse filme desse jeito, caralho.
Today we are thankful to Jacques Tati for giving us Playtime because it's so wonderful. It's a joy to see. So sometimes it's necessary to jump into the unknown, as this movie says, because of course there's no way an unusual personal art film is going to be able to compete with a film designed to make money. And then, as you know,
O vídeo tá no
for
máximo, o
example,
vídeo, velho.
I've made this analogy. In the fast food business, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars to make an
Mas tá legendário.
McDonald's or an addictive potato chip, or Coca-Cola is a good example. But art is not Coca-Cola, and there's no way to guarantee that a film, and in fact, I'm sure that a film like this can only make money, as Apocalypse Now did, if it stands the test of time. That's the only critic who really matters to anyone. And so, ultimately I made the film for myself, and those colleagues or friends that I know would appreciate having done it, and the rest is up to time, really.
Eu tô muito incomodado com o pôster lá atrás, porque esse pôster é muito feio, velho. Caraca, tá me irritando.
So the question also is the door you enter the movie to, which I don't know that people realize. I mean, if they think about it, they'll realize. But a movie is just images on a screen. There's nothing
Perfeito.
there. Everything is in the audience. And
O filme são só imagens numa tela. Puta que pariu. Isso aí foi um murro Pra todos os cinéfilos aí do chat aí. Vocês são apaixonados por só imagens passando numa tela. É só isso. Nada mais além disso.
If you give the audience, if you let them come in through the right door, the illusion works. And all the tears are their tears. All the laughter is their laughter. But if they don't go in the right door, it just is nothing. It's bad. It's terrible. And now with the door being so carefully prescribed for them by big companies, it's very easy for them to not go into the film in a way that will let them enjoy the illusion, unless they see it more than once, which usually happens. Because when you make a film with this big a budget, it's for sure going to be looked at again in the future, and they're going to say, well, what was this? And
Caralho, mano, então é tudo marketing. Eu pensei que ele era burro por gastar o dinheiro dele todinho no filme, mas é tudo marketing desgraçado. Ele fez um filme, mano, vou fazer essa porra aqui mesmo, e se não se pagar agora, vai todo mundo ver daqui 50 anos, porque todo mundo vai pensar, caralho, olha aquela merda que o Coppola fez em 2024, que ele endoidou e fez um filme de 300 milhões de orçamento porque ele quis. E aí eu vou me vender em cima disso. Gênio, tá? Gênio.
The second and third time is going to help you go through the right door, and you'll be able to, sort of what happened with Apocalypse Now.
Speaking about time, of course, the movie is also about time. I think that it translates to people nowadays in nostalgia. There's a lot of nostalgia in movies everywhere, in art everywhere. You had your share of nostalgic movies in the 80s. Do you feel nostalgic about something? And how do you relate to nostalgia nowadays?
Well, I mean, nostalgia.
Boa pergunta.
I remember that period in which the so-called my generation changed Hollywood. And what had happened was interesting because we were the first generation that had two views of cinema. We had the great American cinema people like William Wyler and Fred Zinnemann and George Stevens and many great American filmmakers. But we also, and then we had, of course, the young ones like Stanley Kubrick and John Frankenheimer, but we also, and Orson Welles, but we also had the great Japanese filmmakers, the great French filmmakers, the great Italian. I mean, how many Italian filmmakers were there after World War II? There were 50. And the great Swedes and the great Carl Dreyer and Ingmar Bergman. So we had a unique view of cinema that no one had ever had before because it combined these two worlds, and we knew what we wanted. We wanted to make films like those, and they trusted us. And then, of course, there was this period for a while of these wonderful films, and they became. So it's an interesting story, to say the least.
Following to that, we are here at O2, and it's a big company house, but we are not. This is an exception. This is not the industry that we could become as Brazil, as a country. What tips would you give us to, like, should we go as the American industry and maybe bring in international productions here, or should we like do as Nigeria or India and have its own kind of movie being made?
Do what you love. You can be
Ele é muito paz e amor, né?
What you love, because that's all that's important. Money is nothing.
Caralho, de novo ele com esse papo. Filho da puta, tu tem 200 milhões de reais pra gastar na porra do filme por amor e fica falando dessa merda de que dinheiro não é nada. Carai, meu irmão, eu tenho que sobreviver por mês com menos de R$1.000, cara.
We can go back in history, and at the end of World War II, people in Germany went with wheelbarrows, millions of dollars in a sense, their dollars.
É o primo rico deles, velho. O primo rico do cinema.
That was something that you need. So, you know, do what you love, help your friends, be a good member of the human family.
Aí ele divou.
Because we're one family. I mean, you know that, but a lot of people don't realize that everyone on Earth is part of one family. We go back to the same great-grandmother and great-grandfather.
Tu não é da minha família, não.
we're a family of genius. But why does no one ever say it? Because you can't control geniuses. So they don't want you to know you're a genius, because they spend $7-8 trillion in advertising to sell you, to market you what? A little bit of happiness. How can you sell happiness to people who are unhappy? You can't.
Eu não sou feliz,
So
eu
you
sou
make the
triste.
people unhappy, and then you can sell them. So I propose that we're a family of geniuses, we're one family, and we're deliberately kept to be unhappy through advertising and commercials and all of that stuff, because you cannot shear us like sheep if we think we're geniuses.
Speaking of Caesar, of course, the main character of the movie, he tries to convince everyone that his dreams is worthwhile and worth fighting for. It's not very different from
Já deram o toque, moleque. Eles já receberam o toque que tava acabando o tempo, viado. Se liga.
being a filmmaker.
Se liga.
His dreams is worthwhile
Aí, ó.
and worth fighting
Já
for.
recebeu o
It's not
toque,
very
já.
different from being a filmmaker, is it? It's kind of similar, isn't it?
Yes, but what is Caesar really saying? He's saying we're in need of a great debate about the future, and we want everyone in the world to take part in that debate, and we want to be able to ask any question. That's all. That is utopia. Because for sure, if we can ask any question, then we can ask questions like, do television commercials make people more unhealthy mentally because the commercials are saying you're not okay the way you are unless you have a Mercedes, or you're not okay unless your wife looks like this cover girl. It's telling you you're not okay, but it's doing it insidiously all the time, repeating that all the time. So if we stop doing that, or we control it in a way that it does not make people feel like I'm not okay. I mean, it's terrible in America because they have guns. And you tell somebody he's not okay the way he is unless he owns a Mercedes, and he's never going to have a Mercedes. He goes in and shoots all his employees because he figures I would just kill myself and I'll kill them too. No, Megalopolis says how I feel. It's time we need a debate about the future, and we need everyone to be involved in it. We need to talk about how my dream of success for my movie, of course, I'm old grandpa, great-grandpa. My dream of success, what would make me happy, I don't think it's possible, but if on New Year's Eve, people would see this film, and at night when they go home, instead of saying, well, I've decided I'm going to not eat so much, or I'm going to stop smoking, or I'm going to not be so bad in relationship to my wife, instead I would like them to say, is the society we're living in the only one available to us, and how could we make it better? Because if they, as the movie says, if they can ask that question, that is utopia. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt that we'll make it better because we're geniuses.
Do you see it as a Christmas movie, like a Frank Capra movie?
That's what I would love, but I know that won't happen. But that question we can ask, is the world we're living in the only one available to? Of course it's not. We can improve it. Look at Kurt Chiba. Jamie Lerner, who has got a lot in this movie, he knew that they needed a public transit system. But a public transit system costs $400 million, and in Brazil, if you get $400 million, half of it's going to be stolen by those guys who fly around in helicopters.
Toma, crítica.
So the truth of the matter is Jamie Lerner built a public transportation system. It didn't cost anything. It was all done with buses and these cheap. Have you ever seen it? It works.
Yeah.
And then he was able, because it worked so well, and it didn't cost anything, that the people weren't taking their cars into the city. So he said, okay.
Cara, eu ainda não vi Megalopolis, tá? Mas o filme é uma utopia. Eu tava pensando sobre isso esses dias, aí. Como o gênero da utopia ele é muito difícil de trabalhar, né? Cara, eu acho que a única utopia bem sucedida comercialmente da história, talvez que eu consiga lembrar, é Star Trek, né? Star Trek tem esse caráter de ser uma ficção científica utópica, né? Mas é muito difícil trabalhar com o gênero da utopia, porque a distopia é muito mais fácil, né? Porque a distopia trabalha com conflito. E numa narrativa, o conflito ele é mais fácil, né? De se construir e de um público se engajar na história pela utopia, né? Ou pela distopia. Eu não vi o Megalopolis, mas foi uma utopia. Só me deixa mais curioso pra ver o filme ainda. Porque eu tava pensando sobre isso esses dias. por coincidência, assim.
The streets, cars are not allowed. Look at the traffic.
Chamou nós de corrupto.
In São Paulo, I was in a car for doing nothing for a half
A melhor
hour.
utopia sendo da Bjork.
Curitiba,
Perfeito.
you walk in the streets. So here you have in your
Ele
own
gosta de
country
Curitiba,
an
né?
example of how if we can think about it and talk about it, we can come up with good solutions.
Curitiba, a cidade utópica.
To this day, Curitiba still is the #1 city in the world winning the award for the best garbage separation. And a lot of it comes from a favela, but he trades them vegetables for the... So, yes, we can come up with great ideas to make the world a wonderful place. And you're not so important, but your children are when you have them.
He's got you.
You got two, well, already they're
I
important.
know, yeah, yeah,
We want them not to be in a mess.
yes,
They didn't do anything wrong.
yes. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Então, cara, então Megalopolis só existe porque ele visitou Curitiba, a cidade, né? A cidade de Curitiba que não tem crime, tá? Não existe crime em Curitiba. A cidade, a Europa do Brasil, Curitiba, né? A cidade que não tem lixo na rua, Curitiba, né? Pô, imagina se ele tivesse visitado São Paulo. Se ele tivesse visitado São Paulo, se ele tivesse visitado São Paulo, coitado, não existiria Megalópolis.
Obrigado.
Obrigado. Agora eu quero ver os comentários. Vocês falaram que os comentários estão uma pérola. Deixa eu ver aqui. Peraí, deixa só. Tenho que coisar aqui um negócio. Eu tenho que entrar no vídeo sem ser baixado para conseguir ver os comentários. Toma. Deixa eu ver o que é que tô comentando.
How I feel. It's time.
Cadê os nerds? Essa foi a melhor conversa que eu achei até agora, tá? Achei demais ele nos altos 85 anos ir pro Brasil e dar tanta entrevista e boas entrevistas. Ah, tô falando bem, pô. Tô falando bem. Coisa linda. Curitiba. Ah, tô falando bem. Eu pensei que o pessoal ia estar espumando. Bela entrevista. Ah, tô falando bem. Marvel é fast food, mas se não fosse por ela, vocês do Omelete não teriam 2 vídeos com mais de 150 mil views sobre os conteúdos do Zé Boné. Receba. Que é essa resposta. Se a Marvel parasse de trabalhar, muito canal ficaria sem conteúdo. Pode reparar, quando o filme americano dá ruim, sempre o diretor dá diversas entrevistas para a mídia brasileira. Ou até vem ao país, como foi o caso de Trap. Canalha, atacou o Shaya. Eles sabem que a gente baba ovo pra gringo. E como um adestrador, joga um biscoitinho pra gente realizar o que eles querem. E neste caso, é ir ao cinema salvar a bilheteria do filme, né? Cara, e o Omelete tá respondendo às críticas, tá? O Omelete tá defendendo, pegou a espada e foi defender o Coppola. Caralho, chamou a gente de os caras vêm adestrar aqui a gente. Hahaha, prefiro então fast food do que essas comidas de restaurante caro que cabe em uma colher. Analogia is my passion. Vocês são tão patéticos, sério, me dá nojo. Vocês construíram essa empresa em cima do amor dos fãs da Marvel. Mas sempre que vocês podem, vocês cospem no prato que comeram. Sim, eu sei que foi esse velho idiota que disse isso, mas vocês amaram, né? Vocês estão colhendo o que plantaram. Toda essa decadência é por acharem que o público é burro e vocês são inteligentes demais, cinéfilos demais. Disse Bacon Cheddar 86. Meu jovem, ninguém aqui tá reclamando de fast food. É a opinião do Coppola. Se acalme. Beijos. Respondeu o Omelete TV. Se não citar a Marvel, não tem engajamento, né, Omelete? O fast food que é o assunto principal do canal. Aqui realmente tem muito de fast food. Mas espero que não seja só isso cada vez mais, como no caso dessa entrevista. Não precisa ser extremos, como muita gente vai por esse lado. Lúcido. San Rodrigues lúcido. Então é isso, né? O briguinha do caralho. Vamos caçar o que fazer. Meu Deus do céu. Preguiça da porra. Eu gostei de Trap. Trap é bom, pô. Vocês prometem que se a Marvel terminar, esses canais do YouTube acabam, por favor. Tá longe, viu, da Marvel terminar. Após visitar SP, o Megalopolis vem... Após visitar São Paulo, o Megalopolis vem aí, pô, moleque. Vai tomar no cu. Tá bom, chega de Scorsese. Eu não quero... Ou Scorsese. Chega de Coppola. Não quero mais ver Coppola.